The notification appeared on millions of screens at exactly 2:47 p.m. Pacific Time. Breaking. Tech billionaire Elon Musk launches unprecedented public attack on White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt after she defends President Trump's latest policy announcement. Her response has left the world's richest man speechless and scrambling to delete tweets. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Politicians paused mid-sentence during live interviews. Cable news anchors interrupted regular programming. In boardrooms across Silicon Valley, executives watched in stunned silence as two of the most powerful voices in America engaged in a digital war that would reshape the political landscape forever. What began as a routine policy disagreement had transformed into something much deeper, a confrontation between inherited privilege and earned merit, between raw power and moral courage. The morning had started like any other in the Trump White House. Karoline Leavitt, at just 26 years old, had already earned a reputation as one of the most formidable press secretaries in modern history. Her quick wit and unshakable loyalty to President Trump had made her both a media darling and a lightning rod for criticism. Today's press briefing was supposed to be routine questions about infrastructure spending, foreign policy updates, the usual Washington dance. "The president's position on electric vehicle subsidies remains clear," Karoline said, her voice steady as she faced the packed press room. She had spent the morning reviewing talking points, anticipating the questions that would come. Her hands were steady on the podium, but inside, she knew she was walking on delicate ground. "While we support American innovation, we will not allow taxpayer dollars to prop up companies that have actively worked against American workers and values." The statement was carefully crafted, but everyone in the room knew exactly who she was talking about. Tesla, Musk's crown jewel, had received billions in government subsidies over the years. More recently, Musk's acquisition of Twitter, now X, had put him at odds with various government policies on content moderation and free speech. The CNN reporter in the front row raised his hand immediately. "Secretary Leavitt, wouldn't this policy hurt American competitiveness in the electric vehicle sector?" Karoline took a deep breath. She had prepared for this specific question for 3 hours the night before. "Jake, what hurts American competitiveness is when billionaires use taxpayer money to build personal empires while firing American workers via email and moving production overseas. The president believes true innovation doesn't depend on government handouts." The response was precise, but Karoline knew she had crossed a line. She hadn't mentioned Musk by name, but everyone in the room and everyone watching at home understood the reference. She saw some reporters exchange knowing glances. Others were already typing furiously on their phones. Within an hour, Musk fired back on his own platform. The first tweet was measured, almost diplomatic. Disappointing to see such short-sighted policy from an administration that claims to support innovation. "Perhaps we should focus on building the future instead of destroying it with political rhetoric." But as the afternoon wore on and as more users began engaging with his posts, Musk's tone shifted dramatically. His responses became sharper, more personal. At 2:15 p.m., he posted something that would change everything. "This is what happens when you put unqualified children in positions of power. Some people get their jobs through merit, others get them through political theater. Guess which category applies here?" The tweet was accompanied by a photo of Karoline from her college days, with the caption, "From sorority girl to spokesperson, the American dream or American nightmare." The photo had been pulled from an old Instagram account, showing Karoline at a college party, smiling with friends. It was a completely innocent image, but in the context of Musk's attack, it seemed chosen to diminish her. What followed was a masterclass in digital warfare. Musk, with his 150 million followers, unleashed a barrage of increasingly personal attacks. He questioned Karoline's intelligence, her qualifications, even her appearance. He retweeted decade-old social media posts, shared unflattering photos, and encouraged his followers to do their own research about her background. "She's never built anything, never created a job, never risked her own money on an idea," Musk wrote at 2:32 p.m. Yet she thinks she can lecture entrepreneurs about innovation? This is exactly what's wrong with politics today. The attacks were relentless and deeply personal. Musk shared screenshots of Karoline's college transcripts, somehow obtained by his network of supporters. He mocked her hometown of New Hampshire, calling it, quote, "a place where the biggest innovation is maple syrup." He even went after her family, posting old photos of her parents and questioning whether they had, quote, ever contributed anything meaningful to society. Mechanic father, nurse mother, he tweeted alongside a grainy photo of Karoline's parents at an old school event. At least they work for a living. Can't say the same about their daughter. Inside the White House, the mood was tense. Senior staffers gathered in the communications office, watching the feeds in real time. The screens showed a constant stream of notifications, mentions, retweets, comments. The attack was spreading like wildfire, with hashtags like #CarolineExposed and #SororitySecretary gaining traction. Some suggested Karoline should stay silent, let the storm pass. This will blow over in a few days, said Communications Director Mark Stevens, a 60-year-old political veteran who had weathered his own crises. The less attention we give it, the faster it dies. Others wanted her to fight back immediately. We can't let this slide, argued Sarah Chen, the youngest communications advisor. If we don't respond, it'll look like he was right. He's trying to destroy me, Karoline said quietly, her usual confidence shaken as she scrolled through the endless stream of attacks. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends, family, and colleagues. Some offered support, others expressed concern for her safety as Musk's followers began sharing her personal information online. The phenomenon known as doxing had begun. Her home address appeared on online forums. Photos of her house were posted with threatening comments. Phone numbers? Hers, her parents', even college friends circulated freely. The Capitol Police had been notified and were increasing security. At 3:45 p.m., Musk escalated further. He posted an edited video of Karoline slightly stumbling as she left the podium a week earlier, with Britney Spears' Circus playing in the background. The caption read, "When you're so out of your element you can't even walk straight, maybe you should go back to New Hampshire and let the adults talk." By 4 p.m., #Karoline Leavitt was trending worldwide. Cable news shows were running split screens showing Musk's tweets alongside footage of Karoline's previous press briefings. Political commentators debated whether Musk had crossed a line, while his supporters celebrated what they saw as a necessary takedown of the political establishment. On Fox News, Tucker Carlson opened his show with, "Tonight we watch a tech billionaire do what the mainstream media refuses to do, hold a government official accountable." On CNN, Anderson Cooper began with, "What we're witnessing is a coordinated and misogynistic attack on a young professional who is simply doing her job." Karoline sat in her office, door closed, staring at her computer screen. Her communications team had prepared several draft responses, some defensive, others conciliatory, but none of them felt right. None of them captured what she was really feeling in that moment. She thought about her journey to this office, the late nights in college, studying political science while her friends partied, the unpaid internships, the entry-level campaign jobs, the years of proving herself in a world dominated by older, more connected men. She remembered working the night shift at a convenience store to pay for textbooks, eating peanut butter sandwiches for breakfast because it was all she could afford. She thought about her mother, Linda, a nurse who worked double shifts for years to help pay for Karoline's college. About her father, Robert, a mechanic who never missed a school recital or soccer game, even when he was exhausted from work. They had called earlier, worried and confused about why a billionaire was attacking their daughter. "I don't understand why he's doing this, honey," her mother had said, her voice breaking. "You were just doing your job." And then she thought about Elon Musk, a man who had undoubtedly achieved incredible things, but who had also inherited wealth and privilege that most Americans could never imagine. A man who was now using his platform to try to destroy her career and reputation simply because she had done her job. Karoline opened a new browser tab and began researching. No advisors, no consultants, just her and the facts. She went through Musk's family history, his past statements, the lawsuits, the broken promises. She read about his father's emerald mine in South Africa, about how he had bought his way onto Tesla's founder list, about workers fired via email. At 4:20 p.m., something shifted inside her. The doubt and fear were replaced by something stronger. A cold, controlled fury she hadn't felt since she was a child, defending smaller classmates from playground bullies. At 4:23 p.m., Karoline began typing. Not a prepared statement, not a carefully vetted response approved by committees and lawyers, just the truth in her own words. "Mr. Musk," she began, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "You want to talk about qualifications? Let's talk." The thread that followed would be screenshot, shared, and quoted millions of times in the hours that followed. It was a masterpiece of controlled fury, devastating in its precision, and undeniable in its truth. You inherited an emerald mine fortune from your father's business dealings in apartheid South Africa. I worked 3 jobs in college to pay for textbooks. You bought your way onto the Tesla founders list after the company was already established. I earned my position through a decade of public service, starting as an intern and working my way up through merit and dedication. She didn't stop there. Tweet after tweet, she systematically dismantled not just Musk's attacks, but the entire persona he had built around himself. She cited specific examples of his company's failures, his broken promises to investors, his history of attacking women and minorities who dared to criticize him. You talk about creating jobs while firing thousands of workers via email. You claim to support free speech while silencing journalists and critics on your platform. You position yourself as a champion of innovation while copying ideas from actual inventors and entrepreneurs. Each tweet was backed by links to verified articles, public documents, Musk's own previous statements. She had turned her political science background into a weapon, using meticulous research to support every claim. You fired 10% of Tesla's workforce in 2022 via email at 3 a.m., calling it, quote, trimming the fat. Those people had families, mortgages, dreams. To you, they were just numbers on a spreadsheet. You promised Mars colonists by 2024. You promised flying cars. You promised to solve traffic with underground tunnels. You promised a humanoid robot that would change everything. How many of those promises have you kept? 0. You sued a heroic diver who saved children trapped in a cave in Thailand, calling him a pedophile because he criticized your PR submarine idea. That's the character of a man who now attacks me for doing my job. The thread continued for 47 tweets, each one more devastating than the last. She addressed his family history, his controversial statements about COVID-19, his stock manipulations through tweets, his problematic acquisition of Twitter. But it was her final tweet in the thread that truly landed the knockout blow. You have all the money in the world, Mr. Musk, but you can't buy what I have. The respect of colleagues who know I earned my place here, the trust of a boss who values loyalty and competence over wealth and connections, and the confidence that comes from knowing that everything I've achieved, I achieved through my own merit. Your attacks say far more about you than they ever could about me. I learned one thing growing up in New Hampshire. You judge a person not by how much money they inherited, but by how they treat people when they think no one is watching. Today, the whole world is watching, Mr. Musk, and they see exactly who you really are. The thread went viral instantly. Within minutes, it had been retweeted hundreds of thousands of times. Major news outlets began quoting it in breaking news alerts. Politicians from both parties, many of whom had their own complicated relationships with Musk, began sharing and praising Karoline's response. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "This is what it looks like when someone who actually earned their place responds to someone who bought theirs. Brilliant." Even some Republicans, traditionally allied with big business, expressed support. Senator Marco Rubio posted, "Regardless of political differences, personal attacks on public servants doing their job are unacceptable." Well responded, at Karoline Leavitt. For the first time in years, Elon Musk went quiet on social media. The man who typically tweeted dozens of times per day, who seemed incapable of letting any slight go unanswered, suddenly had nothing to say. His last tweet before the silence was a link to a SpaceX video, posted at 4:19 p.m. 4 minutes before Karoline's devastating response began. Behind the scenes, sources close to Musk later revealed panic had set in. His legal team was frantically trying to assess potential liability for the personal attacks. His PR advisors were begging him not to respond, knowing that anything he said would only make things worse. His business partners at Tesla, SpaceX, and other ventures were expressing concern about reputational damage. Tesla's stock dropped 3% just in the 2 hours after her response, revealed a source close to the company's board. Investors were nervous about Elon getting involved in more unnecessary controversies, but perhaps most significantly, Musk himself seemed genuinely shocked by the response. He had expected Karoline to crumble under pressure, to respond defensively or not at all. Instead, she had turned his own weapons against him with surgical precision. He kept refreshing his mentions, reading the responses, confided a source close to Musk later. I don't think he'd ever been called out like that before, especially not by someone he thought he could easily intimidate. The silence stretched on. Hours passed, then days. Musk's usual stream of memes, product announcements, and political commentary had stopped entirely. His followers began to worry. Had something happened to him? Was he planning some kind of massive retaliation? During this time, Karoline's life changed dramatically. Her office was flooded with flowers and letters of support. Young women from across the country wrote to say she had inspired them. Universities began inviting her for speeches. Publishers reached out about potential memoirs. But there were also darker consequences. Death threats arrived via email and mail. Her security had to be increased. Her family in New Hampshire hired a private security company after strange vehicles were seen circling her parents' house. 3 days after Karoline's response, Musk finally broke his silence. But instead of the angry, defiant tweet many expected, he posted something that stunned even his harshest critics. I was wrong. Karoline Leavitt didn't deserve those attacks. I let my frustration with policy disagreements become personal, and that's not who I want to be. I apologize. The apology brief, direct and seemingly genuine, sent shockwaves through both political and tech circles. Elon Musk, the man who had built an empire partly on his willingness to fight anyone and everyone, had backed down. More than that, he had publicly admitted he was wrong. The tweet was followed by a series of more substantive actions. Musk donated $5 million to a charity supporting young women in STEM organization Karoline had mentioned in past interviews as important to her. He also implemented new policies on X to combat targeted harassment of public officials. But perhaps most significantly, sources reported a fundamental shift in Musk's behavior. The man who had reveled in online confrontations became more cautious, more reflective. He began consulting a larger team before posting about controversial topics. For Karoline, the victory was complete but complicated. She had won the battle, proven her mettle against one of the most powerful men in the world, but she had also learned something about the cost of public service in the digital age, about the ways that power and privilege could be weaponized against those who dared to challenge it. In her next press briefing, she was asked repeatedly about the incident. Her response was measured, professional, but with a hint of the steel that had served her so well. I accept Mr. Musk's apology. We all make mistakes, and it takes courage to admit when we've crossed a line. I hope this can serve as a reminder that political disagreements don't have to become personal attacks, and that there are real people behind the titles and positions we hold. She paused, looking directly at the cameras. But I want to be clear. I won't back down from doing my job because someone with a lot of money doesn't like what I have to say. That's the difference between serving the American people and serving yourself. The exchange had lasting effects far beyond the immediate participants. It became a case study in crisis communication, taught in business schools and political science programs. It sparked conversations about online harassment, the responsibilities of platform owners, and the dynamics of power in the digital age. For young women entering politics and public service, Karoline Leavitt had become more than just a press secretary. She had become a symbol of resilience and strength in the face of overwhelming pressure. Her response to Musk's attacks proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon against intimidation is simply the truth, delivered with precision and conviction. And for Elon Musk, the incident marked a turning point. The man who had once seemed untouchable, who had believed his wealth and influence made him invulnerable to criticism, had learned that there were still people in the world who couldn't be bought, intimidated, or silenced. It was a lesson that would stay with him and change how he approached conflicts for years to come. The digital age had produced its share of viral moments and public feuds, but few had the lasting impact of those 4 hours, when a young press secretary faced down the world's richest man and won. In a world where power often seemed to flow only to those with the most money or the loudest voice, Karoline Leavitt had proven that sometimes all you need is the courage to stand up and tell the truth. Months later, when asked in an interview how she found the courage to respond, Karoline smiled, the same confident smile that had become her trademark in press briefings. My parents taught me that you stand up for what's right, no matter how powerful the person on the other side, she said. They might have more money, more followers, more influence, but at the end of the day, truth is truth, And that's something no amount of money can change.